All right, good day, everyone. This is Jason Straight with the Cloud Pass Virtual Group. Our presentation today is, if I can get it to not cover it up. There we go. Our presentation today is Humble Azure Cloud Shell CLI demo with Vikas as our presenter. And before we go into everything, though, I'm going to go through a few announcements. So the first thing is that this virtual group is sponsored by Microsoft Azure. Microsoft Azure sponsors us in hopes to help folks understand more of what they can do with building data platforms in the cloud. And then also, hopefully, you guys will take a look at the Microsoft Azure components, which is almost always what we're looking at within this virtual group anyway. So it's a good fit. Coming up in just a few weeks, Bob Ward will be speaking at the Azure SQL Digital event. That's an event that Microsoft has coming up here pretty quickly, and it's a good opportunity to learn a lot more about Azure SQL database and features that are being built out into that. If you are not yet a member of the virtual group, I do encourage everyone to do so. You can do that by going out to cloud.pass.org, and you'll be given an option to log in and then to subscribe to the virtual group. By subscribing to the virtual group, you get access to the newsletter that lets you know about upcoming presenters and then any schedule changes. In regards to upcoming sessions, we have a lot of sessions on the calendar. We've got 28 more sessions scheduled currently through March of next year. So there's lots of different opportunities to learn. Oftentimes we've got 2 sessions per week. So do pay attention to that, especially coming up here on October 21st. Jason Anderson from Microsoft is doing a SQL Server Security Futures session, and it's an NDA session. So it's one of those ones that get signed up right away because you need to be have an NDA on file with Microsoft in order to attend that session. Even though we have lots of sessions scheduled, there are still openings on the calendar. So I'm trying to fill up every Tuesday and Thursday all the way through March. And that's about 60 something sessions. So about half the slots are still available. So if you are interested in presenting, you can go to the form out on the cloud.pass.org website, or you can just send me an email at cloud@pass.org and I can get you onto the schedule. Coming up this fall is the Virtual Pass Summit 2020. A good opportunity to learn about data platforms and how you can get them built out, and then basically everything related to that. If you have not registered and you are planning to register, you can get a discount on that by using our discount code that's shown there on the screen. This virtual group is part of a number of virtual groups that Pass helps to support. Some of them focus on different aspects of data platforms like data science and database administration. Others focus on delivering content in other languages, such as Global Spanish and Global Chinese. Lots of opportunities out there to learn, just like with this virtual group, so please check those out. And I expect some of you will have some questions throughout the session, and if you do, please type them into the question panel, and then at the end, we will go through those questions. And without further ado, our session today is Humble Azure Cloud Shell CLI, demo with Vikas. And let me just make you presenter. There you go. All right, your video's coming through.
Thanks, Jason. Can you see my screen and video stream coming?
Yep. Yeah, it's there.
Perfect. Thank you. Welcome everyone from across the world, wherever you are. Really great to have you here. Let's go and talk about Azure Cloud Shell CLI and look at what we can do with it. And I've actually tagged the word humble with it because it's one of those things, right? I mean, sitting there, it's a kind of very naive and innocent looking utility which is sitting for you to go and leverage. And we kind of look at all the different technologies out there, all the different utilities out there, and something like this generally gets ignored. But it actually plays a very critical role in a lot of things and automation and few other bits and pieces, which we will go and explore that today. So with that, let's go and get started with it. So a bit about myself. My name is Vikas Rajput. I am based in Melbourne, Australia. I stand for three things throughout my career, at least: data engineering, automation, AI, and ML. All these things have been quite close to me and to my heart. On data engineering side, it could be anything on SQL or NoSQL side. It could be very large databases. It could be IoT stream data. Information security is another area that I'm actually quite passionate about, and obviously change management. It's a bit of a shame that a lot of people don't think of change management and config management as something which cuts through in data engineering side, but I find it really, really helpful and very useful as well. So hopefully, you can probably explore that a bit more. Other than data engineering, automation is one thing that I'm very, very passionate about. And for me, it's about anything as code. It could be SQL table, it could be some table, it could be some object, procedure, user definition, whatever that's at. That's something that I, again, feel very passionately about. You have all the different jazzy terms for that. You have DevOps, DevSecOps, DataOps. I'm pretty sure there will be more ops out there tomorrow. But for me, it's scripting and it's X as code. And that is what I generally believe in. And other than that, AI/ML is another area that I keep delving into. I don't qualify or think of myself as a data scientist. I don't think that's the one area that I want to go into as such. But I do believe in integration quite heavily. In fact, that's one of the things that I've actually done with my team's help, and obviously been delving into it. And automation being one of the things that I'm very passionate about. These are the bits and pieces that I've worked with, be it on ML tooling, operations, and AI/ML in general. I do have quite many certifications which I have been working through being part of Microsoft. Any data technology stack certification, I hold that right now. Plus, I am a certified trainer, MCT, have been CSPO, and I have been holding MCITP or MCSE certification since probably 2008, if I'm not wrong. So well over a decade of having some of the certifications on the top tier of the ranks. All right, so with that, let's get started with this. And because Cloud Shell is such a simplistic and yet very powerful utility available to us, I will try to keep this session very, very simple. And agenda itself, probably is a good start on that. So we will talk about three things today. We'll talk about introducing you to Cloud Shell. We will also talk about features, and we will delve into some of those things, how you can go about and using some of these things basically. And towards the end, we will go and have a bit of a play, do a bit of a demo. And again, the demo that I'll be doing is only going to be touching the surface. When it comes to automation, when it comes to things that you can achieve with this, the limit is just endless. So you really can go and have quite a bit of fun with that. So let's go and talk about what exactly is Cloud Shell in Azure, and what exactly it is, and why should I use it? Why should I be bothered about it? So what it is, well, it's a shell. That's quite a bit of a dumb response from my end, but if we think about what exactly a shell is, I think that itself is quite important to understand. Shell is something which actually gives you a window to all the command line utilities and bits of pieces that you really want to run. And if, like me, you have had a bit of a Unix and Linux background, that's where I actually started my career. Command line utilities, which runs on shells, they have been the dark horses, and they have been the ones which actually have been doing the grunt work and really heavy lifting in the industry. And they have been doing this for like decades and decades. Shell is something which lets you invoke the command line, do some logic around it, make it automated, do some if else kind of a scenario, do some logical reasoning, and execute different things on different outcome basis. And that's what is actually being exposed as well. So in a very simplistic term, what shell is, or Azure Cloud Shell is, it's actually one of those shell environment, and it is very simplistic yet very powerful because it brings in all of that operating system based utilities, and you can actually deploy more of those and then really can use that for cloud based and specifically Azure based orchestration and executions. How it basically works behind the screens, and we will see this as well, is it basically uses containers, and off the back of that it actually can give you a bit of a storage where you can, store your programs, store your files, store your data if you like, for example, temporary at least, if not permanently, and then at the same time have different shell environments that you can execute. And we will see shortly what I mean by that. So going further a bit more, it's a shell, but it's running in cloud. If you think about the traditional shells which run on operating system, they generally are contained and you can't go and do certain things with it because it's all executing in one place, right? Whereas if you think about what's happening in this particular scenario is that you're running this shell on cloud and you can really do a lot of things which really becomes one of the orchestrator window for you. In the same window, you can actually, for example, trigger certain applications. You can look at the code windows, for example. We will go and look at that as well. So it's quite a bit interactive in that ways. Another key area that it actually is really, really helpful is that it's authenticated by default. So what that basically means is that when I go to my Azure portal, when I go and execute on Cloud Shell, it basically has the security context already contained in it. It already has that defined. And with that security context, with my subscription and few other bits of details that's contained with it, it really can go and execute a lot of things programmatically. And I don't have to worry about doing the handshaking that I probably would have done if I'm executing those things on my machine into the cloud. So one of the challenges that we have had for quite some time, at least in the initial few days of cloud and Azure as such, in fact, cloud in general, I would say that. So we were doing a lot of automation, we were doing a lot of infrastructure as code kind of a thing on our machines, on our laptops or desktops or whatever that we have for development. And then we were trying to do the deployment in cloud. Now, with IT security governance and few other bits and pieces in place, what that actually meant is that security context transition was not happening automatically. It was not seamless. In a lot of cases, it was more of a hindrance, irrespective of whether or not company wants to adopt cloud or not. It was proving one of the hindrances, and that's where Cloud Shell actually comes in quite heavily, because what you could do, for example, is you could do your development on your machines if you like, and then push that code into a Git repository or something like that, and then onto your Cloud Shell, you can really go and get that code imbibed up, and you can really access that and do whatever you want to do, including the builds and deployments and those kind of things. So we will go and see a bit of that as well. But authentication itself is such a huge reason for us to go and consider something like this. And that's one of the big wins as well. We talked about interactivity, and what this actually allows us to do is it allows us to access the utility Cloud Shell on the browser itself. So no more considerations around security or deployments or application installations and this and that and whatnot. If a browser is allowed in your organization, if you can go into portal.azure.com, effectively you're able to reach shell.azure.com as well. And that's how powerful this is. And at the same time, I do want to call out, it's not like if it's accessible, then it's more of a security concern for some of the organizations out there. It's not the case, because When you have something like this accessible through the cloud, then basically it is contained in cloud itself only, and it's not kind of letting you run something from cloud onto your enterprise networks and things like that. It allows you to trigger the shell in two different modalities. PowerShell is one, which basically takes care of everything and anything which is there on Windows platform, .NET, and a few other bits and pieces around that. So if you have any .NET libraries, if you have custom built functions and those kind of things, or if you have built PowerShell modules and things like that, you can really go and leverage that as well. And then you have Bash, which is obviously the traditional Unix environment, but because of Bash, you actually can go and access any Apple or Mac related executions as well, because they work on Bash as well. So why to use it? Well, first thing is it actually is free compute, and that's the reality. You basically pay for the storage. So effectively what happens is you have a container defined, and whatever that you store in that container, that gets used up, and that is something that you go and pay for, of course. But the compute itself is absolutely free, right? And that is something which is quite a lot useful. So what is happening is, oops, sorry, my just trying to get this sorted. Yeah. So you basically what you do is you create a storage account kind of a thing. And then whatever scripts you want to store, whatever data you want to store, you go and store that on this. And for this to be executed, there is a machine which gets created, more like a containerized VM, which basically reads off that and executes it here, right? And that is something which is quite powerful. So what you do is you pay for this, but you don't pay for this. And that is something which is quite useful in a lot of ways, especially if you are just doing some personal projects, if you are doing some POCs, if you're more like a startup, if you're just working on a side project. Just imagine the kind of capacity that it can bring and leverage that it actually brings in. Obviously, it's more than that. If you want to leverage this in a pure enterprise solutioning scenarios as well, you could use this for something like dev and build environment. I have done that quite a bit as well. There is always that constraint around defining a build machine and having that defined up and contained and everything. What you could really do is if you know that these are the very specific packages that you need to go and build your package, your solution or whatever, you can really work off the back of this shell environment. And if you need to bring in more packages, if you need to bring in more utilities, you can deploy them as well. So it's not stopping you from doing that. And by virtue of doing it, you actually can standardize your utility pack, you can standardize your environment, and you can use that for doing things like for side projects, for development, or even for the build environments and those kind of things. One of the very key applications for this that I am seeing from the peers and from other fellow learners and professionals out there, they're using this for doing the cloud control. This literally becomes their control center through which they can go and manage the resources, the assets, deploy them, redeploy them, kill them, manage them, report them, whatever that's there, right? So all of that can be done automatically in cloud itself. And guess what? They're not dependent on the security context and things like that. It can be accessible from anywhere in the world. So if you are chasing that dream of, I will work from the beach kind of a thing, here you go. This is one big enabler in doing that. And it being a shell environment, whatever is your choice, PowerShell or Bash, you obviously can do a lot of automation with this. And that is another key area that it actually can help in. So with that, let's go and talk a bit more about what are some of the key features and how do we go and leverage that. So when it comes to features, one of the key thing about this, and we will see this as part of the demo as well, is that it actually allows you to persist storage. And that's a big win. So you don't get paid, you don't get charged for compute environment for this or whatever. It is available to everyone in the organization, provided that you have access to azure.com. And with this, imagine a team of like 10, 100 people or whatever. They can have one code repository, and they could actually be just sourcing this code onto their shell environment and work off the back of that for their local deployments and things like that. And the way it actually works is that when Azure goes ahead and creates the kind of replicates or creates the new shell environment for you, your data, your scripts, your objects, they don't get lost. And that is very important. So from that perspective, persistence of the storage itself is quite useful and something that we will see as well. From featuring perspective, security is something that we talked about. If you have struggled with this in the previous occasions where you have done your development and those kind of things on-prem, and you're trying to deploy those things in cloud, yeah, trust me, back in the days, it used to be a big nightmare. Every now and then, especially if you're in that consulting space where you have to go and get things done and sorted for your clients, for your vendors and things like that, it used to be a big challenge. A hoop of discussions, a hoop of approvals and this and that and everything. You miss out one thing and then again back to square one. All of those things can be taken off by doing something like this. And at the same time, the way it has been done in security context way, it is not getting around a problem, it is actually solving that problem. So that is very critical as well. So if someone is out there who's having security as left, right, center for their career and career pathways, so it's not going ahead and kind of taking a curveball and basically trying to solve a problem in a bit kind of odd way. It actually does solve that problem in a good way. So just be mindful of that. Another key bit which generally do not get talked about a lot is packages. Doesn't matter whether you have PowerShell preferences or if you have Bash preferences. If you have access to something like this, what that basically means is that you can literally go and access thousands and millions of the packages which is available on open source repositories and those kind of things. You can build your own packages as well, and you can deploy that. And because you have got the persisted storage as an option available as well, guess what? You don't have to go and deploy that every now and then, right? So you go and create your environment, customize it to the level that you want, and then you persist that storage, and that's about it. And things really remain that way. So that is very, very crucial, especially if you're coming off from environments where you need Python, you need machine learning, you have, all the different other environments which basically works off the back of open source communities and those kind of things. Really, really works well in this context. From my personal experience, Cloud Shell, when it's used with Git, any Git repository, obviously GitHub is something that we at Microsoft would encourage, but any GitHub repository of your preference will work, to be honest. And yeah, if you have your code in there, you have shell environment here, really when you go and combine these two together, it really works really well. And if you want to think about something like this, think of things like templates, Azure automation, Azure functions. It just just a start point. As I said, we're just literally touching the surface. Think of your deployments through templates. Think of deployment to containers. Think of deploying Azure SQL databases and VMs and so many other things that's there. If you have got a JSON file defined, which basically defines your architecture, guess what? You can really go and create and scrap that all from the Cloud Shell itself. Nothing to be worried about. And it's not just about, it's giving you the control and it's giving you the compute environment that you can really go and work off the back of. It actually comes with a great set of tooling. And again, as I said, if you are a command line person and find joy when you deal with command line, you will know this. These options that's available, be it Bash, then PowerShell, tools like AZ Copy, Azure CLI, editors like Vim, Nano, obviously are, my personal favorite is Visual Studio Code. I'm not saying it because I'm at Microsoft. It really has been something which has, really proven. And if you look at the charts and the numbers and everything, Visual Studio Code has really taken off, strongly, really strongly. So if you haven't tried it, do try that. And then, code build utilities like Git, Make, Maven, NPM, pip, whatever is your preference, you name it, and you can get it here. It's either available out of the box, or you can go and deploy that. And that's the big beauty of it. And then some of the tools like kubectl, Terraform, Docker, and this and that, that's available. I come from a very heavy data background, so obviously database utilities and everything that's like quite close to my heart as well. You name it, MS SQL, SQL CMD, Postgres, MySQL, client applications, all of that is something that you can go and really deploy here. Right, so with that, let's go and think about some of the demos now. What we're going to do is we're going to just have a very kind of, subtle start with it, just to see what it can do and just, bit of a browsing here and there. We will also explore how do you go about extending that 6 GB limit. So what happens, just talking a bit about that as well. When you go and sign up and create your shell environment for the first time, it actually creates the whole, gimmick for you and basically creates the file storage and, a file share and those kind of things. By default, it starts with a footprint of 6 GB, right? But it's really up to you. If you want, you can change that. You can extend it to something bigger than that as well. And we will also talk about creating some Azure resources. So with that, let me bring in my utility. Jason, can you confirm if you're able to see my screen, please? Okay, let's go and look at this. So what I just did is, if we go to portal, Azure portal, it basically starts from here. So let me go and actually start it from where it should be. So let me just go and so I'm just resetting it so it starts literally from scratch. So I'm just doing it again. This is where the Cloud Shell can be accessed. Here you go. It gives you an option, what do you want to start with? It could be either Bash or PowerShell. If you want to directly access Cloud Shell as well, you could just go to shell.azure.com as well, and it will take you to the same screen, which is here. So let's just wait for that as well. So this is also coming up, which is basically going to do the same thing. And it asks me, what is it that I want to do? So let's go and explore that a bit more. So it's again, just taking to the same screen. So let's not worry about this. Let's go back to this. I will prefer to start with Bash. So let's go and look at that. It basically then tells me, okay, what is the subscription that I want to use? So I'm going to use the one that I know I can access. Basically what I'm doing, let me just go and increase my screen size a bit more. I hope this is working better. So what this actually is doing is, it's, I've selected one of the subscriptions, which is great. I can either now choose to create the resources. So I will need to create a resource group first. I will not go into why this is needed because this is more on the Azure fundamental side. So instead of creating new, I know that I have got one which I would like to use. So I will use this, which is fine. Then it asks us to provide a storage account. Now, storage account is important because that's where the container will be stored. Again, I will use the one which is already predefined for me, which is fine. Now, file share, if I like, I can use the one which is already available, or I can create something of my own. So let me go and use the one which I already have. Um, if I like, I can create one of my own as well. Okay, so it's really up to you. Actually, let's go and use this. Um, let's use this. So let's create new. That's fine. Right. So this is available now. Now, obviously, this is available in bash mode. If I want, I can really go and change to PowerShell here itself. And that's another, good part about this. So all of these tools are actually interoperable, and really I can switch to context anytime I want. So it's not like, I have to be in, like, it's not like if I'm in PowerShell, then I'm not able to access bash. It really can be worked both ways as well. So both of these are available relatedly, and you can really leverage that as well. So the reason I say that is because there are times when you have massive projects. Some part of it is done in, say, Windows context, in PowerShell and those kind of things. And mind you that PowerShell is no more just Windows or Microsoft platform. PowerShell is now open source, and it actually works on Unix platform. And what we just did is a good evidence of that, actually. And then if you go to PowerShell, so if you more defaulted to PowerShell, then probably start with that, and wherever you need to bring in bash, bring in bash. Alternatively, in this case, what we're doing is we are starting with bash, and if I need to bring in PowerShell, I bring in PowerShell. So with that, let's go and just try out certain things. Let's just try to see what's there. So I want to start with, let's just see what's actually here. So this is a Linux environment. It's actually running Ubuntu and things like that, and working off the back of that. If I look at what's working on this, just want to check what is my file storage looking like. It's a human readable format, so I can see the drives and mount points and everything. Now, if you think, right, this is where the mount is actually. So I just want to quickly show you as well what is happening here. So if I just go to this thing, just give me a minute. So I got this. And within that, I have got the file shares. I just created that file share, and this thing is actually running off the back of that. And there is one which we already have as well, and we will probably go and look at that a bit later on. So this is where the mount and everything is happening. You can really bring in what you want. If you want to check what all things are already installed, APT is one of the utilities available by default on Unix platforms, and it really gives me all the different packages which are already available. So just imagine this is the list of utilities which is actually available out of the box, and you really can go and deploy some more if you like. But you might be happy with this. You might need some more. It has things like Python. It has some zipper. It's got a few more other utilities available, which might be of good use to you, kind of a thing. Zoo, for example, I just saw Zoo as well, which is already pre-deployed, which is pretty amazing. So all these things are available out of the box, and this is not it. That's the key bit to remember. You can bring in your own packages. open source or your own created versions, and you can really work off that. So with that, let's go and do some more action on this and try to create some resources. Now, there is a suite of command that's available, so I really encourage you to go and explore that a bit more as well. But basically, I will go and say, okay, let's look at what different resources are available in this. So it can look at AZ group. So this is Azure group list, output as table. So I know that there is one which is created. So this is where my Cloud Shell is hosted right now, which is great. But what I want to do is I also want to look at, do I have some more resources, for example? So that's another, so I'm not trying to show you the command line. I'm just trying to show that all these different utilities are available that, oops, sorry. Which you can really work with, and you can automate this quite a bit as well. So with that, let's go and create some parameters. So I'm going to execute certain things. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a resource group. I have basically assigned certain value to it, and I'm basically calling that with RG as well. So if I just go and show you, so I've just created one of the resource group name, which is that, and I have defined the location to be Southeast Asia. I can now go and create resource group. Every resource that you create in Azure, that gets created in a resource group. So now I'm actually creating that resource group. So that's done. If I want to go and revalidate that, again, I can run this. And this will basically come back with the RG, or resource group rather, which I just created. Now, how about I go and create certain resources which I can automate through here. Now, before I run this, I will show this what is actually happening. So I'm creating a deployment group. Now, this is one of the things which I would suggest you have a look at. But basically, in essence, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create an Azure SQL database, and I'm trying to use a template for that. Right, so this is the template which is already available, published. So it's basically published as a JSON file, and I have not got anything here. I'm basically invoking this whole command line with everything that I need to, and that's actually using one of the template definitions which I have published or somebody has published, and I'm just reusing that, and that's about it, right? So I'm just going ahead and triggering that now. It says, do you want to provide string value for this? I would say, yeah, why not? Let's just call it SQL admin. Okay, don't tell this to anyone. Let's look at this. Oh, good thing. It's not showing the password, so that's great. So now what it's actually doing is basically reading that template and then deploying that resource. What we are also going to do is not worry about that and actually go and leverage something which is defined globally, and we will be able to use that as well. So while this is happening, how about I take you to another screen and basically show you some more things that we can do with this. Right, so again, just the same thing. Oops, come on. So on this, I can go and try out different things. This is one of the host name. Again, not that something that you need to know, but still, Who am I? There are certain things that I can look at. I'll say, AZ. I'm trying to check some processes. There are certain processes going on. It shows me that, which is great. So all of these things I can really go in all the different, if you're in PowerShell context, you can run things on PowerShell. If you are in Unix context, or you can run things on Bash. So let's go, and we talked about using Git. So let's look at where exactly we are. So that's that. Let's go and actually create a folder with the name Git, just for the fun of it, and we'll see if there's anything in here. Oh, so nothing is here, which is great. Let's go and look at Git clone. Now, mind you, I just deployed this. I created this context. I did not create any other thing. I basically did not deploy any packages. Git and a few other utilities, I said that earlier, it's available out of the box. So what I'm now doing is I'm basically cloning one of the repositories that I have. For example, yep, so it's basically getting that repo now. And if I now see this, it basically has got the whole package. I can browse this if I like. If there are certain things that I want to check in. Yep, so all of these things are available. I could, for example, have packages in here. Let's just see, is there something here? Yep, so it's actually there in architecture. So I can then look at the files. If I want to, I can go and execute things and things like that. So for example, the steps that I'm executing right now, that's there in the lab Azure Cloud Shell.sh file. And I'm basically running that just to show you the demo and things like that. But if I want to, I can really run that as a background task or something like that. And all of the things that's contained in this script will be deployed up. So the same way you can really go and have a bit of a play as well. So this database has been created now, so that's great. Let's go and have a look just to be on the resource side. And while we do this, actually, let's go and trigger something else just because it will also take some time. So, right, so let's go and now create a VM. And again, I'll just quickly show you what I'm doing. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm actually not deploying an asset with my predefined configuration. I'm just using a standard image, and I'm then basically giving things like, so I'm basically creating a CentOS virtual machine. So I've defined the image name as that, and then I'm saying generate the SSH keys so I can connect to it and those kind of things. And then I'm defining the size of the VM, and then that's about it. So let's go and trigger that as well. Right, so that's going on. So let's go and look at the database in the meanwhile. So the database has been created. If you, let me just reduce the screen a bit more. Yeah, so if you think about it, I did not define any of the things, right? Database name or the server name and those kind of things. And it basically has created all of that out of the box. The only thing that I provided with my JSON file is the username or admin username and the password, and that's about it. Everything else, the JSON basically defined, automatically, and I was able to execute that as well. So that's on the resource side. I'm hoping the VM comes back pretty quickly as well. Right, so that's done, which is great. If I want, I can now look at using this. And it basically says, do you want to connect with the SSH? And that's about it. So I'm now basically connected to that. That's it, right? So, sorry. So all of this, who am I? Again, because this is a CentOS image, I know that I'm that person, which is great. So this was that, right? So we talked about a few things right now. We did some packaging, we deployed certain assets, we defined, our storage resources, we created resource group and things like that. So let's just quickly look at what's there again. So, oops, if I can spell correctly. So I just created this resource group, which we saw. Let's go and also look at resources that we just created. So we just created certain things. So in this, we created CentOS VM. And if you think about it, everything that's needed for that resource, that's kind of, created automatically and those kind of things. Sorry. So all of this is there. Now let's do the last bit. What I want to do is not be dependent on this, small file. Let's just say that for whatever reason, I need to bring in data or a code repository which is more than 6 GB. So I'll just show you quickly. When we created our file, it basically created that by default to a quota of 6 GB. But what I have done, I have defined a new file share, which is basically 200 GB. Now, what I want to do is instead of leveraging this, I want to leverage that. But before that as well, just quickly, let me also show you something. So there is another thing, all these still, options that we talked about. So this is actually a Visual Studio Code utility, which is now running interactively in the screen itself. So you can really go and play with that as well. Another thing that you could do is if you have some local files that you directly want to upload or download, again, not executing, but uploading and downloading, that you can do from here as well. Okay, so that is something that you probably might want to give it a try. So let's go and try to unmount this. And we'll say, yep, that's fine. Yep, that's fine. I'm basically saying, yep, let's get rid of this. Now, when I say reconnect, it will again give me the prompt of what do I want to do. And I will select my, all the different assets. I will still go and stick with that. I will go and stick with that. And I will use the one which is already there, which is FS large. And that's it. Now, when this comes up, whatever, if there is something that's there on that mount, on that particular file share, it will be already available. And if you think about it, I actually had got my Git repository previously deployed up on this. It's exactly the same, but obviously it's not what I executed recently. This is something which is beyond that, right? So with that, let's go back to our session. So let's just quickly recap what we talked about. We talked about what exactly is Cloud Shell. We also talked about, where you can use this, where, it actually can bring you some advantage and, things like security context. You can persist the storage. You can really use this as one of your dev test or dev build kind of environment. You can leverage the security context, which gets built out of the box. It's a container. You only pay for the storage if you store something. And the compute basically which comes tagged along with it is mostly free. So that's something that we talked about. What we also did is we then created certain assets. We created a virtual machine, we created a database, all from the command line itself. So that's been something that that we just did. So before I go into the questions, just a quick reminder, if you like, you might want to take a screenshot or something like that. At the same time, it can, it will be available through the shares and things like that. But there are key resources which is available. So there is Microsoft Learn site that we really encourage everyone to go and have a look at. ak.ms/learn is the site that you should be looking at, irrespective of what technical level you are at. You will find really good resources and training material there. Azure DevOps is another key bit that I would like to call out. And what we are doing basically is the front end of the DevOps, because you will do a lot of things in DevOps, and then you can automate a lot of things. You can do a lot of executions either through the DevOps itself or through here. And then quick start templates. So we did touch on one template in the session. Be it that you want to create your own templates, be it that you want to leverage what's available out there. There are providers out there. There are key community leaders like you have Jason here, who really are kind of working for the community and creating resources and things like that, and they're making it available for everyone to leverage. For example, we used one which is on creating Azure SQL database. I did nothing in that, right? I just went ahead and leveraged what's already available, and just amazing how much work has been done and tested, because it just works, kind of a thing. And if it doesn't work, help them out, solve that out, and publish it back to the repo owner. Shell.azure.com is another key resource. So we already looked at it, something that generally a lot of people do not look at. You can either trigger the Cloud Shell through the portal itself, or if you like, you can trigger it through shell.azure.com. So with that, I think we still have some more time left. I will now open up for the questions. If there is anything on the, if you like, you can put that on the chat window, please.
All right, thank you for the presentation today. So far, we don't have any questions, but we'll give it a second here for anyone to get something in case they are in the midst of typing.
Sure.
But thank you for presenting. This has been great. Something actually I've been meaning to take a look at and just hadn't had a chance to with everything else I've been working on. So this was very timely for myself.
Perfect. No, really great. Glad to hear that.
All right. Looks like we're not going to have any questions. So thank you everyone who attended here today. Hopefully you enjoyed the content and got what you were looking for out of it. And Vikas, thank you for presenting, and looking forward to having you come back very shortly.
Definitely. We'll definitely looking forward to that, Jason. Thanks for having me, and thank you everyone for your time. Really appreciate that.
All right. Thanks, and goodbye, everyone.
Thanks.